Japan is threatened with new U.S. tariffs. President Donald Trump claiming that Tokyo won't buy American rice. Japan says its agriculture won't be sacrificed.
A wheat ship sets sail from Canada, cutting across the ocean bound for Japan. Just a few hundred miles away in Kansas, massive silos packed with American grain sit in eerie silence. Not because the harvest failed, but because no one's buying anymore. In the first half of 2025, the U.S. lost up to 94% of its agricultural orders from Asia, a staggering collapse that's pushed America's farming exports to the brink. Meanwhile, Canada, a country once slapped with U.S. tariffs, has quietly taken over the entire market with one powerful advantage: consistency and trust. Think this is just a farmer's problem? Think again. This collapse is coming straight to your dinner table, hitting the price of bread, meat, even gas. When no one abroad is buying American food, you end up footing the bill for that failure. And the question is, how did we let this happen? 94%. That's not a projection, it's the harsh reality now facing American agriculture. In just the first half of 2025, the US lost 94% of its agricultural orders from Asia, either canceled or rerouted to competing nations. It's an unprecedented drop, so severe that experts are calling it a severed artery of America's export economy. The wheat fields of Kansas are now ruled by dust and wind. Barns that once supplied millions of tons of red meat each quarter are overflowing with unsold inventory. But what breaks the hearts of American farmers isn't drought or disaster, it's losing customers they spent decades building trust with through sweat and reputation. This collapse didn't come with alarms, no bang, no warning, just one postponed order. Then another partner pausing imports, and then in a matter of weeks, contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars disappeared. Japan, once fiercely loyal to U.S. beef, pivoted to Alberta, Canada. South Korea stopped importing soybeans from Iowa to test new supplies from Brazil. Even Singapore, long seen as America's back kitchen, turned away in search of more stable solutions. No debates, no negotiations, just a silent withdrawal. And that silence within an export-driven economy like America's is deadly. No farm association can salvage a system when demand collapses, not supply. No stimulus check can restore the trust of customers once it's been broken. Why did they lose that trust? It wasn't the price. America still grows top-tier soybeans, produces world-standard red meat, and harvests some of the highest yield wheat on the planet. But for Asian buyers, those who prize consistency in every shipment, every container, U.S. behavior had become too erratic. Buying American ag products began to feel like a gamble. Trade policy in recent years lost its foundation of predictability. Tax rates shifted, negotiations pivoted, retaliatory measures flew back and forth. One week it's duty-free, the next tariffs. One day the beef sector is subsidized, the next it's cut. These shifts weren't necessarily irrational, but they came too fast too often for global partners to feel safe. Now imagine you're a food importer in Japan. You're not just buying products, you need long-term contracts to supply supermarkets, restaurants, and catering services. A sudden disruption from the U.S. could mean broken deals at home. Rather than waiting on Washington's next unpredictable move, these buyers took the easier path: Canada. Canada may not be cheaper, but they're more dependable. And in an era of global uncertainty, dependability matters more than cost. The shift was quiet, but its impact on America was anything but. In Minnesota, several livestock farms shut down by March due to collapsed exports. Ranchers dumped cattle at half their investment cost. In Iowa, over 13 million bushels of soybeans sat unsold despite frantic efforts to reconnect with Korean buyers. But no one is coming back. This 94% plunge wasn't just a number, it was a shockwave that rattled the entire supply chain from farms and processors to ports and truckers. In rural Missouri, one small town that thrived off wheat exports to the Philippines lost 600 jobs in 2 months. Shops shuttered, banks called in loans, families fell into jobless limbo. The worst part, no one truly saw it coming. By the end of 2024, all the stats still looked normal, but once tariffs were reinstated in early 2025 as part of another trade rebalance strategy, Asian markets reacted instantly. No press releases, no protests, just orders rerouted elsewhere. No speeches, no headlines, just one crystal clear message sent through actions. Markets don't need promises. Markets need stability. And to many international partners, stability no longer comes from the United States. The most painful truth: the people suffering from this instability aren't the policymakers. It's the farmers, the ones who tilled the soil, who trusted the system, who believed in the honor of American production. They can't comprehend how a country that once fed the world is now unable to keep a handful of loyal buyers. They can't accept that behind every grand political gesture, hundreds of doors quietly close. Today, while Canada is expanding cold storage ports and logistics to grab even more global market share, American farmers are unloading bags of grain to turn into livestock feed, or worse, burying it just like some did with potatoes in Nebraska not long ago. This isn't just a market loss, it's a loss of credibility. And once credibility is gone, no matter how good your product is, the world will look at you with doubt. And that's something no balance sheet can ever measure. Somewhere across the plains of Nebraska, a cornfield was set ablaze not by drought but by a farmer who refused to harvest it. No one was buying, there were no warehouses to store it, and the selling price both was so low that bringing it to market would only deepen the loss. That is the immediate cost of losing buyers. The production chain doesn't stop, but the output side collapses completely. Seeds were already sown, fertilizer already spread, labor already paid, but the crops were left to rot in the very fields once called America's breadbasket. American agriculture is unlike any other industry. When orders disappear, farmers can't simply pause operations like an electronics factory or an auto plant. The seasons keep turning. Crops still grow, grains still ripen, cattle still reproduce, and costs continue to rise day after day, even as the market has slammed shut. As Asian partners withdrew in unison, the first thing that happened was a spike in inventory. Cold storage reached capacity, grain silos overflowed. The next consequence, prices plummeted because supply couldn't contract fast enough while demand had vanished by 94%. A bushel of soybeans that used to sell for $13 or $14 now fetched less than $6. Beef prices fell below the cost of raising the cattle. Corn and wheat, once destined for Japan and South Korea, were now repurposed as livestock feed at home, a use once reserved for lower-grade stock. This situation didn't need years to unfold. Just a few months led to a wave of bankruptcies. By June 2025, over 12,000 farm households across 8 Midwestern states had filed for bankruptcy protection, the highest since the 2008 financial crisis. But this time, the cause wasn't banks. It was simply a lack of buyers. American farmers are no longer thinking about profits. They're thinking about how to escape with the least loss. Some chose extreme measures, burning their fields before harvest as a way of refusing to watch their labor be devalued into nothing. Others abandoned entire seasons, leaving their land to be overtaken by weeds. Many sold their equipment and leased land to foreign companies just to buy themselves a few years of survival. In an economy where farmers were once national symbols, they are now being left behind. Those who used to feed America are now scrambling for a new way to survive, not through crops, but through loans, retirement savings, or emergency assistance from the state. No one becomes a farmer to get rich quick, but no one becomes a farmer to watch their life's work be forgotten on the very land they cultivated. And when farmers collapse, the communities around them fall like dominoes. A small town in Kansas, once home to 3,000 residents, nearly all of whom worked in agriculture, watched its largest farm shut down. The local mill closed soon after. Then the logistics company, the tractor repair shop, the rural bank all followed. No crops meant no cash. No cash meant no business. Within 90 days, over 60% of households left abandoning homes and empty schools behind. Missouri and Ohio saw similar scenes. Rail lines that once carried soybeans to port now sit idle weeds growing along rusted tracks. One packaging plant owner in Ohio summed it up: "We can't package what no one wants to buy." Rural banks were the next victims. As farmers failed to repay loans due to lost markets, land-secured mortgages turned into death traps. Local credit unions were bought out, shut down, or merged into bigger banks, forcing residents to borrow from distant institutions with higher interest rates and harsher terms. Communities fractured not by civil war, not by a pandemic, but by a long silence from the other side of the ocean. Customers no longer placed orders. And perhaps the cruelest irony of all, while thousands of tons of U.S. grain sat unbought grocery shelves in major cities, still forced Americans to pay 20-30% more for bread, meat, and eggs than they did the year before. Not because of a supply shortage, but because there was no mechanism to move the surplus from the fields to where it was needed. Logistics failed, retailers refused to buy without pricing clarity, and consumers kept paying more for the same goods that were being exported just months ago. That's the bitter paradox. America has excess wheat, but bread prices still rise. America has excess beef, yet the elderly are cutting their meat portions due to inflation. Meanwhile, Canadian companies celebrate expanding production, opening new processing plants, and hiring farmers right across the border. This fracture isn't just spreading across farmland, it's sinking into the soul of the people. American farmers don't blame the Asian markets. They don't resent domestic consumers. They feel betrayed by the very system they believed would protect them, by the belief that if they worked hard and produced quality goods, there would always be a buyer. But that belief wasn't met with policy support, it was met with silence. And when a community collapses, it's not just soil left untended. It's memories burned, traditions forgotten, and futures put on hold. A future in which no one can say for sure, will Americans still be able to live off the land in their own country? While America floundered in the chaos of lost markets, Canada said nothing. No triumphant press releases, no boastful tweets. They simply kept doing one thing, delivering on time. In the first half of 2025, Canada's agricultural exports to Asia surged. Grain rose by 41%, beef by 37%, and soybeans, once America's signature strength, jumped nearly 46% in new contracts with South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, and Malaysia. This growth wasn't the result of some miracle. It was the outcome of a long-term, quiet strategy, one where Canada chose to be reliable instead of loud. Take Saskatchewan, Canada's largest agricultural province. Since 2022, the local government has poured billions into automating farming, expanding cold storage networks, and investing in dedicated rail lines that connect directly to the Port of Vancouver. Every freight car leaving Regina departs on schedule. Every container arriving in Osaka or Busan is sealed to international standards. No pesticide residue scandals, no shipments rejected for hygiene. In Alberta and Manitoba, production export alliances have been formed between farmers, logistics firms, and commercial banks, all sharing profits and risk. This new cooperative model allows small producers to reach global markets without relying on giants like in the US. When American goods were turned away due to tariffs or eroded trust, it was these small farms in Alberta that stepped in to fulfill the abandoned contracts. Canada never declared it would win back market share from the US. They simply filled the void America left behind. No noise. No debate. They won with the stability Asia had been searching for. In a recent survey conducted by Nikkei in Japan, 71% of agricultural importers said delivery reliability mattered more than price. Another 65% emphasized they couldn't stake their future on a partner who changes policy too often. Most telling of all, the US had dropped out of the top 3 most trusted suppliers, and Canada had taken its place. This wasn't random. It was the direct result of Ottawa's macroeconomic strategy: don't burden trade with geopolitical posturing. Canada is a member of CPTPP, the multilateral trade pact the US exited. This gives Canada stable trade ties with the entire Asia-Pacific bloc, without getting entangled in tit-for-tat tariffs or political feuds. Canada also knew that to compete with the US, they couldn't be cheaper or outproduce it, but they could be more trustworthy. By investing in cold chain logistics, stricter quality control, agricultural labor training, and transparent governance, they slowly earned goodwill. Eventually, buyers stopped asking who was stronger and started asking who wouldn't let them down. Canada even took advantage of America's missteps. After several food safety scandals involving US beef in 2024, many Asian importers grew cautious. At that very moment, Canada didn't just send internal inspection reports, they invited third-party inspections from foreign agencies. A Korean supermarket chain shifted all of its premium beef sourcing to Alberta within just 1 month of quality review. Asian consumers have a very clear value honor in trade. They don't tolerate returned goods. They don't accept policy flip-flops with each election. They want a supplier who brings not just products, but peace of mind. And Canada, while not as dominant as the US, meets that demand steadily and reliably. Canada's rise wasn't a battle. It was a gentle replacement where buyers walked away, not because the old supplier's quality dropped, but because they couldn't take the unpredictability anymore. And once trust shifts, it can't be won back with lower prices or policy tweaks. In recent trade forums, the bitter truth American officials have had to accept isn't that Canada is encroaching, it's that Canada is being welcomed. That distinction reveals everything about global market sentiment. It's no longer about buying from Canada only when the US fails, but about preferring to do business with Canadians. Canada's rise doesn't make for flashy headlines, but every shipment, every contract, every meal made with Canadian crops in Asia quietly sends a message to America. Buyers don't need you to be powerful, they need you to keep your word. And perhaps no one understands that more than American farmers who now watch the northern border with a mix of shock and bitterness. While they struggle with low prices, excess inventory, and vanishing markets, their Canadian counterparts are expanding harvests, hiring new workers, and securing their next orders from Tokyo or Jakarta. In this game, there are no threats, no slogans, just one rule: keep your promises. And Canada is doing what America once did best, but no longer does. It all starts with a jarring question. Is agricultural protectionism without a backup plan really just an arrow aimed at American farmers themselves? The strategy of retaliatory tariffs to protect domestic agriculture has become a double-edged sword. and the very people it was meant to protect are now paying the highest price. First, we must understand the nature of protection without preparation. When tariffs were slapped on agricultural goods, small and mid-sized farms already limited in market access lost their top export channel to Asia overnight. Unlike large corporations that could pivot to Europe or Latin America, these farms lost everything. The rescue programs rolled out after each tariff hike were like temporary band-aids on a bleeding wound, not lasting solutions. Real testimony paints the picture clearer than any statistic. A farmer from Iowa whose family had long supported protectionist policies now speaks with bitter resignation, "I voted for them to protect agriculture. I didn't vote for them to destroy it." That statement wasn't made in a press room. It was spoken from a deserted farm surrounded by grain silos that now stand empty. People like him aren't theoretical footnotes in a policy debate. They're real lives caught in the wreckage of both policy and betrayal. What they lost wasn't just money. It was retirement savings wiped out with unsold crops. It was thousands of hours of labor only for the harvest to rot into fertilizer. It was the collapse of generational investments forcing their children to abandon family farms for construction jobs, trucking, or even dropping out of school entirely. And the worst part, when everything fell apart, they didn't receive what they were promised: safety protection and restored faith in the system. Then there's the older working class, the backbone of rural America. Farmers over 55 with decades of experience are now facing a crisis unlike any before. In a town hall meeting in Nebraska in May 2025, several shared fears about the upcoming season. Many weren't sure they'd have enough savings left to keep their land through retirement. Younger folks could leave to chase jobs in the city, but the elderly, they would simply be left behind. That feeling of abandonment is spreading fast. This isn't the first agricultural crisis, but this time they don't see real government support. Just press statements and aid packages barely covering surface-level damage. These aging farmers don't need headlines. They need a partner they can count on, not a market ruled by unstable political whims. The contrast with Canada only makes the betrayal more painful. Across the border, senior Canadian farmers weren't just handed cold chain systems. They were offered training new models and market access the moment the U.S. began to fall behind. Their support didn't sit in a report, it arrived at the farm gate with practical guides and real restructuring efforts. Canadians didn't win by luck, they won through strategic investment. And their results show it. Back in America, rural workers watched the fallout unfold, not because of cyber attacks, but because of a silent vacuum in leadership. They lost markets funding and their futures. And if no change comes soon, they may also lose faith in the very system they helped build. Because when losing a market turns into losing your government, the damage becomes existential. A former farmer in Missouri once said, "We're not hostages to any policy. We just want to farm, not play politics." That one sentence speaks volumes. They love this land. They want stability. They want politics that serve people, not ideologies. All of this leads to a brutal question. If protectionist policies are implemented without a contingency plan, who pays the final price? The answer is clear: the people. Those who believed in a strong America only to wake up one day and realize they're not the ones being protected, they're the ones being sacrificed. What do we have left to lose? That question echoes dryly across fields scorched by summer sun fields that once bore harvests proudly lifted as a symbol of national pride. Now all that remains are overstocked, expired grains, empty silos standing like ghosts, and transfer stations filled only with wind, not the roaring engines of better days. We've lost 94% of our agricultural orders from Asia. But that number isn't just about trade. It's a stark reminder: if America continues to lose its strategic partners, all we'll have left are memories. We used to be the #1 agricultural exporter in the world. We used to feed the globe not just with food, but with honor and credibility. But today, as the world turns away, we're left with overflowing warehouses and silent valleys stretching from Kansas to Ohio. If we lose the Asian market completely, which accounted for over 40% of U.S. agricultural exports in the past decade, America will lose the very foundation of its farm economy connection with the rest of the world. At that point, farms will no longer sustain local economies. Small towns will lose their reason to exist, and family meals will get more expensive, not because we lack food, but because we no longer control the supply chain. This isn't a defeat caused by a lack of product. It's a defeat caused by no longer being the world's first choice. So how do we reclaim our lost position? The answer isn't to print more bailout money. It's not to roll out a few more seasonal support programs. Those are temporary patches on a sinking ship, unless they're paired with a real shift in strategic thinking. We may need to renegotiate our way back, but not from a place of arrogance. We need to return to the table as a partner in need of trust, not as one imposing conditions. We must understand that reputation in trade isn't built overnight, and once it's lost, it takes a generation to rebuild. We might even need to look at our competitors or learn to cooperate with them. Canada isn't the enemy. They've simply done their job on time, with quality and with integrity. If we can't beat them, maybe it's time we partner with them, building a two-way supply chain, creating mutual growth instead of head-on rivalry. And if that's what it takes to get U.S. farm goods back onto Asian tables, then why aren't we doing it already? Most of all, we need to rekindle the spirit of accountability that defines a true agricultural nation. We can't expect farmers to hold on to hope if we keep leaving them adrift in a sea of conflicting policies. We can't expect markets to trust us if we rewrite our trade rules every 4 years. Honor doesn't live in political resolutions, it lives in consistent, reliable action. At this very moment, with tractors idle in the fields, with rail cars lacking a departure schedule, with soybeans so cheap, no one bothers to harvest. The most important question isn't, what do we do next? It's, do we have the courage to face failure and rebuild from the ground up? Because if we don't, this won't just be a failure of agriculture, it will be a failure to protect the very people who built the foundations of America. And before we end, ask yourself this one last question. Will we continue to let our meals be decided from across the northern border? Or will we reclaim control not with talk, but with action-responsible policy and real respect for the American farmer? The answer won't come from Washington. It will come from a collective awakening of every citizen, every voter, every family now realizing one simple truth. Losing food sovereignty is losing the most essential pillar of a nation. So what do you think is Canada's rise a natural progression? Or is it the inevitable result of mistakes made by the United States? If the very people who once fed this nation are being pushed aside, what's left to believe in when it comes to our future? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Are you willing to let your family's dinner depend on decisions made in another country? Or is it finally time for America to stand up and take back control? This video does not promote division within the United States or advocate for secession. All content presented here is intended for exploration analysis and to spark meaningful conversation based on real events, public sentiment, and emerging social trends. We fully respect the U.S. Constitution and all federal regulations. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss future content where we uncover what mainstream media often leaves out. All analyses in this video are based on current data and an independent perspective. Our goal is not to make absolute predictions or cause confusion, but to offer insights that help communities reflect and respond before it's too late.